I just want to say thank you for coming. I know this was very last minute and responsive to the climate, and I appreciate you for showing up. I like to say that your presence is a present, and it's meaningful to be in conversation with you about this. I want to just say, and we sent this in the note, that what this is and what this isn't. What this is we're going to provide you with some tools that we hope can be helpful for you and yourself to process some, to make some meaning of this moment, to think about your place in it. What this isn't is, this isn't a content. We're not presenting any content that you could take and play with your students around the justice issues going on. This isn't a white Ashkenazi Jew trying to explain a Black person's experience as well. That's not what this is. This is an opportunity for us as M Squared to bring some tools that we hope can be helpful for you to process, that you could then hopefully take and use with your learners. So I just want to read this quote out loud that says, "An experience makes its appearance only when it is being said, and unless it is said, it is, so to speak, non-existent." So we begin there. And we'll move to the next slide to go through our agenda. So this is just a session overview. We're gonna welcome and some ground rules, and then we're gonna do 3 different exercises. We're gonna start with an exercise that uses images for reflection. We're gonna then break up into small groups to talk about those images, and then we're gonna give those images names, and then we're gonna do some private journaling. So also make sure that you have a pen and a piece of paper by you so that you can do that journaling. And then we're gonna pull back the screen, and we're gonna name what we just did. And we're going to talk about some of our theories around meaning making and the importance in helping learners make meaning of their experiences for growth. Okay. So before we go any further, I'd love for you to just settle into your seat and remove any distractions that might be inhibiting you from being fully present. And if you'd like, you're welcome to close your video and just start by taking a few breaths. Let's settle into this moment. Let's put into parentheses anything that feels like it's a distraction from being fully here. And let's lean deeper into your chair or your standing position, wherever it is that's grounding you. And we're going to do 3 breaths. And within each breath, you're just going to hold for 4 seconds. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. And breathe in. And breathe out. You're back on your video. And welcome back. Hi, David. Welcome. First. Hi, Julie. So we want to start with some ground rules around this conversation, which is a very personal conversation, and recognizing that people are entering into this conversation from completely different places and everybody has their own perspective. And so we'd love to just share some of these ground rules, norms, brit, covenant, whatever is the word that makes you feel comfortable, commitment, but using this as just a way to allow us to be fully present and open. And so here are some that Emily, who's on the call, who, by the way, if you have any tech issues, she can help you out. Just personally tech her. She's in her beautiful Memphis home. You can see those southern trees back there. So she shared with us around some language that's going on, that is circulating around having conversations like this. And so we wanted to share them with you. And so I'll just read them out loud. Lean in, participate to the fullest of your ability, authentically and honestly. Lean back, share to all. Speak from the I. Assume positive intent at this moment. Accept and expect messiness. And maintain confidentiality. So first I want to just allow you to take a moment to look back over them. And you could chat at this moment if there is something that to you feels like it's lacking, it's not present here, feel free to add it in the chat box. And what we'd love you to do is you could go to the top of your screen where it says View Options, and you're going to go to your Annotate. You could go down, it's the second to last thing. You're going to go to the Annotate button. You're going to choose a stamp that's exciting to you. Maybe it's a check mark or a heart or a star. And you're going to just put your little stamp next to the ground rule that you want to really try to be fully present with in this moment. So the way to do that again is you go to View Options on the top of your screen. You go to the Annotate. You go to the Stamp. You select your stamp of choice. And then you put it next to the one in which you feel great. Instructions for if you're on a tablet. Emily will get to you. Thank you. I know we privilege computers. It's just true. You know, there's always a privileging of something these days. Computers it is. And yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. So so one more thing before after we've done this is I'd love for you to just go into the chat and share why you showed up today. One reason for why you showed up today. You could put it in the chat. What called you to this session? Why did you show up today? Hope to get content. All right, I hope it's meaning making content because you might be disappointed to build consensus in my org around priority. I urge you to just read these answers if you're not. Great, thank you. And, you know, I want to share that I hope that we can do some of these. We probably won't be able to do all of these, but there's always more opportunities to be able to have more conversations around this if this is something that we want to go deeper into. Thanks. Claire, I turn it to you.
Okay, thanks, Molly. Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to see everyone here. Really good to see you. And I'm just going to do a little bit of framing before we start our first meaning making exercise by asking the question, of course, what is meaning making? That is our first initial question. And you may know that M Squared has done a lot of work actually in the last year or so trying to work on this question of how do we make meaning, or how do we make sense of experiences that we provide for our learners, or even experiences that they have that we didn't design for them. How do we help them make sense of what they do? They have a learning experience, and then they do something, some kind of process, and as a result of that, they are able to make meaning. We use lots of words to describe this, right? So we sometimes call it reflecting, we call it processing, we call it clarifying information, debriefing. All of these different processes that are here on this slide are included in the big umbrella category of meaning making. We're going to assume that. We're going to assume meaning making is a very large idea. It's a big category, and we can do lots of things as part of that to help our learners make sense of things. And so what we're actually going to do today in the next time that we have is we're going to do something on two levels. We're going to have a kind of an experience ourselves where we're going to ourselves practice for ourselves what it means to make sense of events that are confusing and difficult and contradictory and full of all kinds of different ideas. We're going to make sense of those ourselves by using some techniques, and then we're going to do a kind of meta backstaging where we're going to ask, what did we do and how can we use some of that for our learners? So the meaning making questions that we tend to ask include, how do we make sense of what we're experiencing? What is this all about? What does this mean to me? What am I taking away? Those are some of the core questions of meaning making. There are lots of others, but those are some of the basic ones that we will be relating to. And so we're going to jump straight in and go straight to our first exercise. Molly.
Okay, great. Okay, hi everyone. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with images. Sometimes images are much easier to as a way into a conversation than words. And what is that like really cheesy sentence? Like a picture is 1,000 words or something, something of that nature. So we're going to start with looking at a bunch of images, and Emily has put into the chat box a link to something called Padlet, and we'd love for you at this moment to click on it, and it will take you to a page with a lot of different images on it. So make sure that you're there. Again, if you're having a little bit of trouble getting there, feel free to text Emily. And we want you to choose an image that reflects how you're feeling in this moment in relation to Black Lives Matter, the current political reality, and the way that you can, and to look at the different images, the way that you can then we're going to ask you to add your name. And the way that you could do that is you hover over the image, and there's a little pencil-like post, and you can click on it and you could share your name. And 2 people can definitely, or 3 people, or 4, however many, can have their have their name on the same image. So so take a minute to do that. And we'll take maybe a second to sort of sync up. So if you're not seeing your name, and I'm starting to see some images, the names. Just put a thumbs up if you finished with that. Great. Oh, hi, Aliza. There's your little cute daughter. Thumb up. Oh, nice, David, using the thumb inside. I always forget about the inside thumb. Zach, love it. Hi, Jessica. I'm really happy to see you. Great. Okay, so what we're going to do now is actually we're going to spend the next 20 minutes in groups of 4. And there's sort of two things that we're going to do within this group. The first one that I'll give you the instructions for now, and then the next one we'll broadcast the instructions in the group, so you sort of know where we're going from there. But the first one is we just want you to introduce yourself, where you're coming from, you know, if you would like it to be, you know, more than physical, that's fine too. Share your image and a little bit about why you selected that particular image. What about that image resonated for you? So that's going to be the first piece that you're going to do. And then we're going to share out the instructions for what you're going to do after that. And we'll share those instructions in about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're going to send you off. We're going to blast off, send you away into a room within a room within a room within a room within a room.
People disappearing all over the place.
Within a room. Oh, maybe Amy's not here and hasn't accepted it. Is that possible?
Jonathan, Amy, are you there? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they walked away. Okay.
Oh, thanks. That's great. Okay, there's so many things that people want to do in this space.
Yes, and
I'd love to open this up to ask, as you look back over this Padlet, like, what do you notice, if anything, that's coming up for you?
An opportunity for reflection and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
what do you notice from the way people made meaning and the way you made meaning?
That unless you discuss it, you really don't, you could pick, 7 people could pick the same picture, but unless you have a conversation about what the picture said to you, you may be on 7 different pages or 2 different pages, or picking the same picture doesn't mean anything more than picking different pictures until you engage in conversation around it.
Mm. Yeah.
I think there's, you can go, Jody.
Thanks. I will say that it's, you know, I think a lot of like the visuals that we're seeing, or at least that I'm seeing on Instagram or, you know, social media, have a lot of words on them, where it was kind of nice to, you know, not see like statements, but rather like, you know, like depict something that you're feeling from just a visual, like just a picture. I think it's easier to like reconcile your own emotions through that as opposed to like seeing statements.
I agree with that. And also just the way you interpret each image, I think, you know, to one person might be one way versus looking at something else. And I think someone before said, like, if you talk through it and explain the reason why you're thinking about something, I know there's been, as Jody said, there's been a lot of words that are out there. Sometimes just like looking at a picture and like looking at it through your eyes is like a reassurance.
Mm.
I think we've all witnessed the same thing, or the same thing is happening around us, and we've all have a different experience with it and are making, I guess, a different meaning from it. And it seems like each of these images is like almost you know, wherever more than one person put their name, it's like almost a microcosm of that.
Mm. Yeah, I'm very like I'm doing some work around this week's Bible portion, which is Shlach Lecha, which is the episode of the spies going into the Canaan, you know, the land of Israel, and it so much speaks to this. Like, how can people who are seeing the same thing come out with such different results, or like come out with such different realities, right? And so much is because of like the perspectives in which they enter into the thing in which they're seeing and what they're seeing. Thanks. So, you know, we'd love to talk about this for a lot longer, but we want to offer another exercise for this moment. So I'm going to ask you to take your pen or your pencil or your charcoal or your feather. Does anybody write with feather and ink anymore? And I'm going to ask you you're going to have 2 minutes, and we're going to time it to just write. And the goal is to not pick up your pen and to keep writing. And what you're going to write about is based on what you heard, based on what you saw. How does this topic meet you in your life right now? So I'm just going to write that in the chat box. How does this topic meet you in your life right now? Okay, and I'm going to set a timer, and I'll put a lovely little charm that will end it. And we're going to feel free to turn off your video again, and you could start writing now. One more minute. Seven more seconds. Okay. So finish your sentence, and you could turn your video back on. Great, thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to think about reference, rather, Hannah Arendt's opening quote that we had up there, which is really that experiences make an appearance when it's being said. And that was actually articulated when you were talking about the image, of the need to describe the image in terms of really understanding where people are and what they are. And so we're going to ask you to look at your 2-minute monologue that you just wrote, and to find one word or a phrase, no longer than that, one word or a phrase that you want to say out loud right now. a word or a phrase from what you wrote that you want to say out loud right now. And just for the sake of time, if you don't mind, I'm just going to call on people to just share their word. Just take a second. Great. Okay. Robin.
What happens?
Stephanie.
How do I learn more and connect with others?
Zach.
This is outrageous.
Julie. Julie. Blair.
How do we translate this?
Sarah Kay.
Caught up in the shoulds.
Judith.
Show up.
Jody.
How do you unlearn?
Ira.
Remember, we were slaves in Egypt.
Aliza.
Humanizing humans.
Amy.
Endurance and resilience required.
Johanna.
Not making a choice is a choice within itself.
Jessica.
Spend energy on compassion.
Shay.
Lacking confidence, but have the fire in my soul.
David. Looks like you want to say.
There's two Davids, so I'll go. I didn't realize it was not in the chat window, so sorry for that. Living in a small world.
Beautiful. Okay. Stacy.
Outward and inward.
David.
Standing alone in a crowd.
Nicole.
How do I show up?
Alicia.
Bigger scale.
Rachel.
Strong people stand up for themselves. Stronger people stand up for others.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. Thank you. My only regret is that I didn't write those down. So I think I'm actually, before you leave, going to ask all of you to just write those in the chat so we could just put them all together and write to you our new poem that we just created through those words.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to sort of put an end to the part of our webinar which is about our own experience, and I hope it's clear to everyone and it's completely clear to us that of course we could make enormously richer meaning if we carried on, and there's many more things that need to be said, and I don't want to do injustice to the topic itself or to your own wish to talk about it more. I would love to be able to carry on, but we're not going to. We're going to just stop for a minute and step back as educators, and so that we can share with you some of M²'s ideas about meaning making, and we can kind of do a meta zoom out of what we just did, because I think that the things that we just did, both as specific examples and as general principles, can be helpful to you. So I want to just share my screen again. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of concepts very briefly that reflect some of the way that M Squared has started to think about meaning making. And after a lot of work, which I'm not going to talk about right now, but if anyone wants to know more, I'm happy to tell you, we have tried to understand this big umbrella idea of meaning making by breaking it into categories, which we've given names to. Names that describe things that oftentimes we do as educators intuitively and that should be familiar to you. But we've, in our classic M Squared way, if you know, we give names to things that we know that we do in order to understand what we do better and in order to be more purposeful and intentional. So what we've done is we've tried to understand meaning making in three main categories. And as I'm describing them to you, I want you to think about what we've done in this gathering and which categories we've already employed. So there are three categories of meaning making, three big categories. We've given them Hebrew names to go with the English words, which are both all here. Kavanot are intentions, Tovanot are insights, and Hagshamot are active realizations. Those are the three sort of main categories. So what do? First of all, the first part of the process of meaning making involves setting your intention, or kavanot. And those are ways that we as educators help our learners orient to what's about to happen to them. So kavanot usually happen before or at the fairly near the beginning of an experience. And what they essentially do is set up the conditions that a person can get the most out of an experience. If you think of a time that the experience was not framed with intention and you had to just jump in without any planning or any explanation of what you were about to do, and it was very unclear, what are we here for and what are we trying to do? So that is when there is a lack of kavanot. And when there are good kavanot that are set in various ways, and there's multiple ways to do that, that's when you are oriented and ready for the experience. And so that's what happens. So if you want to just think for a minute about the kavanot that we did to create this, anybody want to just jump in? What were some of the kavanot that we put into place for this webinar? There were multiple ones. Just throw them out.
The guidelines at the beginning.
Yep.
Being present.
Sorry?
Being present.
Yes, asking you
the
to be
event
present.
quote that was on the screen in the beginning and also in the email that we received.
Absolutely. We told you that was already the interpretive frame for what was going to happen. Yep.
The ground rules.
Yep.
The breathing exercise to get centered, focused.
That's right. Telling you what we're going to do. In the email, it said what this is and what this is not. And Mollie repeated that even when we were together just at the beginning. Okay, so there's multiple kavanot. Each one does something slightly different. There's different subcategories, but that was what kavanot do. Once one started doing that, then we get to the category of tovanot. Tovanot are usually ways to make meaning during an experience. And they're ways that participant is going to extract some kind of learnings from what they do. If you've been in our senior educators program or other programs where you've learned the theories of Kolb and the cycle of learning, so some of what Kolb talks about, conceptualization and reflection, fits in the category of tovanot. Extracting the learning, conceptually gathering what's happening, making sense of it during the experience itself, or it could be afterwards as well, but essentially trying to make sense. What was this about? So what were the things that we did in that category of tovanot? We did a bunch of exercises.
Using the palette pictures.
That's right. The pictures helped us reflect. We also asked you to put a headline. Titles, exactly. Right. So if you're familiar with Kolb, the pictures were reflecting and the title was already conceptualizing an idea. It was extracting the idea and trying to give it a name or like find the headline for that. That's a conceptualization activity. What else?
Writing.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was when connecting it to yourself, but reflecting that the writing, the pictures, the discussion, those are methodologies. But what they actually did, all of them, was help you extract some kind of learning, and even the words at the end. Right. What's the word that you pick out? That kind of you could create it into a poem or whatever that was. This articulation is also part of creating meaning through tovanot. The third category of meaning making, which we haven't done yet, is what happens at the end, where we take the insights that we have and we turn them into action. We turn them into action that lives beyond the experience itself. So if I've learned something meaningful from this experience that I've had, and I've realized now what it means to me, the question then becomes, how am I going to direct that to my life in the future? What am I going to do about it? Of course, this is particularly relevant, I think, right now, as we're talking about these issues of justice and equality and Black Lives Matter, and those things, where we talk, anyone who starts to say, you know, this is all very well that we've been talking about it and that we feel very deeply, but what are we actually going to do? What's the action that's going to come of our feelings and our meaning? So this is where Hagshamot come into play, and where we say, and even in any other context as well of education, I've had this wonderful experience, I went on this trip, or I went to camp, or I did this thing. How is that actually going to live now beyond the experience itself? This is where what Kolb would probably start to talk about experimentation and application in the world. Hagshamot is where we turn that to the future. So Tovanot, we sort of look back at the experience, and Hagshamot, we look at what the future is going to mean. Those are our three general categories of meaning making. And I'm just going to show you very briefly, and you're not really going to have time to read it, but I will send this out to anyone who wants, I mean, we'll send this to you afterwards. And this is a 4 or 5 day seminar, which is why I'm not trying to cover it all in one go. But what we actually have done is broken each of these big three categories into subcategories. So that we saw there are different ways to make kavanot happen. We can set expectations, we can frame, we can do a whole bunch of different things within this big category of kavanot. Similarly, tovanot, there are multiple types of tovanot. We did 3 different ones here in our exercises. We did a reflection exercise with the pictures, we did conceptualization with the headlines, and we did integration with the plays a steer role and does something slightly different to help us extract tovanot. And I don't expect you to be reading all of these, but again, I'll send it to you. And the last kind of hagshamot, the active realizations for the future, there are also 3 different ways of doing hagshamot that we've identified. So each of those helps us understand categories of meaning making. So really what I just want to suggest to everybody is that whatever the experience is, and it could be the experience of living through this moment of enormous confusion and social challenge and social upheaval, but it could be any kind of educational experience that your learners go through. It could be a Shabbat experience, or a community building experience, or a text study. It could be all kinds of experiences. We can apply these meaning making categories, and if we do our job as educators well, we can help our learners set their intentions, extract insights, and come to active realizations. And that's something that we all need to do, hopefully as ourselves, when we try, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm in Israel, so I'm further away from the conversation about Black Lives Matter than most of you are, but I've certainly been talking about it already since it began, for like endless hours. But perhaps doing a specific exercise, a specific kind of meaning exercise helps you come to a new insight, a new way of seeing it. So it's not just the same talking and going over and over the same ideas, but it's actually, we gave you a directed way to think about these things, and to perhaps, I hope, to find some kind of new meaning out of them. And you can do that with your learners too, if you use these different categories. So I'm going to end there, and Molly will take us to the end. As I say, I'm going to send this to anyone. I'm happy to stay around at the end of this for people who have questions, and this is a much longer seminar that come back to another M Squared event, and you'll get this in more detail, but I hope that it helped at least with making sense of where we are right now.
Claire, Robin did have a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, please. I didn't see your hand, Robin. Go. Yeah.
Robin, you're on mute.
Robin, do you have a question?
Classic. You're still on mute. Let me try unmuting. Oh, I can't. Emily, you want to try unmute?
Send a question into the chat.
Okay. You want me to send it to you in the chat? It just seems like in the spoken notes section, there's a lot packed into it, and there's multiple layers.
Yes. So yes, I would say just off, in a very quick answer to that is, I don't think we need to suggest that you have to do everything in every situation, right? You don't have to do all the different kinds of tovanot every time, and you don't have to do all the kinds of anything, but rather think about when you want to do some kind of meaning making, which type of meaning making serves your purpose, and what do your learners need, and how can you then do that? And sometimes you can do 2 or 3 different types all together, and you can kind of mix them up a bit. Or sometimes you can say, no, we just need to do reflection today, that's it. And yes, we could do other things, but we're just going to do reflection today. So yes.
Great. So just to move us into Hagshama, and again, like there's very complicated and like hour-long Hagshamot that you could do, and then there's very brief Hagshamot that you could do that, and depending on the length of your program, depending on your goals, depending on everything, you sort of fit the methodology for that, for what you're obviously to accompany your goals and what you desire. And so we just want to do a very simple Hagshama, which is, what is one thing that you are taking away? One action that you want to do as a result of this conversation. And actually, I'll ask you, you could write it down, think for yourself, and then I'd love for you to share it in the chat. Keep coming back to my intention. Committing to learning more in my own country. Nice. Nice.
As you're all doing that, I just want to remind you that in about half an hour, you'll get a little survey which will ask you whether this was a helpful and useful seminar and webinar, and we'd love to hear. We'd love to hear ideas or feedback in any way. So please do that, and keep following our newsletters and website to keep track of all the other cool things that we have ready for you.
And also, I think I mentioned this, but we create webinars based on people's interests and what supports them and what they need in this moment. And if this is a conversation that you'd like to continue on, it's said, like, there were a lot of things that people wanted out of this. We will try and curate actually some good resources that we will send to you on topics around racial justice. But if this is a conversation you want to continue, please shoot myself an email. I'm going to put my email in here again. And if there is a critical mass, we can surely organize another one, but I'm leaving it for you guys to be proactive. We're not going to chase after you. If this is something that interests, please email, and we could create more space to do this.
I also see that, Jessica, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to say that regardless of whether we were going to do the Hagshemot, I had, insights come up for myself and like things that I wanted to do beyond this session. So I think even if you don't create space for Hagshemot, like ideally they will come up for people, and hopefully people will take note of them for themselves and then take action with them.
Yes. Yeah.
So our time is up. So I know people beginning to leave. If you want to stay, we'll stay for a little bit longer for questions and things like that. But please feel free to go about your lives, and wish you a good rest of the day. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.